I am now being joined virtually by an international affairs analyst, Bola Adediran from the UK, for an in-depth look into the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine. Good to have you join me, Dr. Adediran.
Thank you very much.
So let me take your mind back to the very beginning of this war, and that's just even before the February 24th invasion, where just at the moment where Russia has stationed about 100,000 troops at the Russian-Ukraine border. And when you look at that moment and all of the rhetorics about the Russian invasion, do you think that Putin really wanted to invade, or this was a war he went into without any central or strategic approach, because now there's just been a few successes recorded by Russia?
Thank you for having me once again. I think that, yes, to the extent in which with the benefit of hindsight, we can look at last summer and the beginning of last year and the build-up of Russian troops along Ukrainian border and determine that it appears that Putin did not have a very consolidated or strategic idea about how the prosecution of the war would go about. Obviously, there was an impression that an invasion of Ukraine would be met with open arms by Ukrainians. Obviously, that has not happened. But I think that what this was obviously taught Russia also is that it has overestimated its capabilities and underestimated Ukrainian capabilities or the support of the West for Ukraine. But overall, I think that Russia is in a difficult position now, obviously, because its strategic goals in Ukraine, especially in terms of capturing Kiev, has been shelved. And as you mentioned in your report, the interest now is really consolidating its position in the eastern Ukraine Donbas region and ensuring that it gains over there consolidated.
The war for Russia has not been a breeze. Russia respected, and many analysts also respected that Russia will take over Ukraine in a matter of weeks, or at least in a matter of days. But that has not happened. And like I said earlier, just only a few successes have been recorded, and that will be the capture of Mariupol. But how long do you think that Russia can hold Mariupol?
Well, the questions about whether Russia can hold Mariupol related to wider questions about what exactly can Russia hold in terms of Ukrainian territory. Even till now, Russia continues to describe these actions in Ukraine as a special military operation, and it has not fully activated its armed forces. So there is still a bit of limitation around what Russia is doing in Ukraine. Until Russia is able to fully declare war and bring all its force and all its capacity to bear in Ukraine, then one has to question what are Russia's long-term intentions in Ukraine. I think that not only in Mariupol, but also in Kherson, where it's held some territory, and in the Donbas region, where in several Donetsk, for instance, where it is encircling Ukrainian troops there. The question obviously would be, if Russia manages to capture those places and hold them for a bit, how long can it hold those places? Military analysts, for instance, have suggested that at the beginning of the war, that if Russia captures most of Ukraine, it would need more than 1 million troops to be able to even hold much parts of Ukraine. So the questions really are sensible, as you've mentioned, and they're really germane. How much can Russia hold whatever territory that it captures on the long run?
And in terms of what is to come, or what is expected in coming days, the whole rhetoric or the idea of a nuclear attack on Ukraine by Russia, is that still a concern at the moment, or that has become a narrative that is basically redundant at this moment?
Well, I think that those comments and those suggestions were coming when it was becoming very clear that Russia was losing troops and equipment by large numbers, and there was no foreseeable of packed military victory for Russia. In recent days, as you've mentioned also in your reports, it seems like the tide is slowly moving into the direction of Russia's victory. And so, for instance, we're seeing that Ukraine troops are Ukrainian troops are Ukraine is losing significant number of troops. You mentioned that on Monday, for instance, that he lost about 87 troops, which is the highest total of troops is lost since the beginning of the war. And in a place like Severodonetsk, there is indication that Russia is not only encircling it, but will be able to capture it in the next few weeks, if possible. They're 25 kilometers away from completely encircling Severodonetsk. So I think those questions about Russia's nuclear attacks are really in the conversation nowadays, and that's partly because Russia is not suffering. Well, Russia has a path towards victory. In the past, Russia has been very clear that when it deems it fit and when it feels that there is the existential crisis that it might suffer in terms of a major defeat, then it reserves the right to use nuclear weapons. And I don't think that current events have shown that Russia is suffering that sort of existential crisis in terms of suffering a major defeat.
Thank you so much for talking to us, International Affairs Analyst Dr. Bola Adediro.
Thank you very much.